You know, to hijack an event like this that other people put time and effort into, and to use their civility of the crowd and the civility of the organizers as an excuse to blatantly yell out your ill-informed opinions is no way to conduct a civil dialogue. It's absolutely appalling. The people who do that should be embarrassed. I would also say that as students and as faculty members, you shouldn't put up with it. There's no way that you should allow people who are doing this to hijack your educational opportunities and to bend and twist the functions and the structures of the university. It's not a good thing, not in any way at all. I would say that was a very disgraceful display, fundamentally. So.
Yeah, well, kindness is the excuse that social justice warriors use when they want to exercise control over what other people think and say. So, you know, if we're bandying back and forth our differences in values, you know, I would say that the highest possible value is truth, and that one of the concomitants is that we need stringent protection for freedom of speech so that we can utter the truths that we see fit. And I think that that's a value that's much higher than kindness, for example. I mean, there's lots of situations in life where kindness in the immediate present is not the appropriate way to react at all. But so, for example, when you discipline children, you often hurt their feelings in the short term so that they can learn to behave properly in the medium to long term so that their lives go well. And so this automatic assumption that the people on the social justice warrior side of the equation are motivated only by kindness when they're also clearly motivated by power is something I find completely untenable. And I don't think that Pete's solution to program my cell phone so that I can remember what names people need to be called is a reasonable solution at all. We're actually supposed to now use electronic devices to bolster our ability to speak freely in case we offend someone.
What would you say Trump's IQ really is? Does 160 seem reasonable?
No.
This will be quoted in...
No, 160 is really, really high.
Yeah.
I mean, the typical... The smart person that you're likely to meet in your life has an IQ of around 145.
Yeah.
160 is getting pretty damn rare. And Trump's old, and IQ goes down with age, fluid IQ, although crystallized IQ either stays the same or goes up slightly. So he isn't the problem solver or the learner that he was when he was 20. No one is. If you're in good physical shape, that helps a lot. His IQ is clearly well above average. I don't know, and he's done complex things in his life, and a lot of them. And that indicates that there's something to him, you know, and he hasn't been successful just in one domain. He's been successful in multiple complex domains, each of which were quite difficult. It's very difficult to be a reality TV star that's successful, right? It's very difficult to work in the construction business, and especially on large projects. And I know he's had his economic ups and downs, but he's stayed in the game for a long time, very stressful. He's very stress resistant. So he's no dummy. I mean, it's nice to always think that your political opponent is just stupid, but he's done too many complex things for me to assume that he's somehow, if he wasn't smart, he couldn't have done those things.
Yeah, I'm glad you're acknowledging that, because when I see the people that are in hysteric mode and just saying he's this evil nutbag who doesn't know what he's doing and all this stuff, it just seems like such a lazy way of thinking about it. You don't have to like any of the things. You may not like the way he speaks or any of that, but the idea that somehow this is a dumb person, I think, is discounting of just the way humans have to work. This is interesting from Super Chat. Do you have
he also won the presidency.
Right.
With a completely original campaign. And it's like, and without spending much money. It's like, okay, is he lucky? Because is that what you're saying? It's just lucky.
Right.
Well, I don't think it was just luck. It was at least maybe, well, it looked at least to some degree like courage. Maybe it was just blind throwing caution to the wind. You know, I don't know if he ever expected that he could possibly win.
Yeah, and as I'm sure you'd argue, it probably had a little something to do with all those things, that maybe there was some courage, but that he also surrounded himself with people who maybe understood politics more than he did.
Well, he could obviously, he can also obviously read a crowd.
Yeah.
Because he was appealing to crowds. And that was partly because he did, I think, try to say what he thought. Now, you could criticize what he thought, and that's fine, but he also didn't prepare the same speech. You know, he didn't prepare a speech and then deliver the same one everywhere, which I think is, I really find that rather reprehensible for people to do that.
Yeah.
Because they're they're parroting themselves, or someone else writes their speeches, which is something I can't even imagine.
I can't, for what we do, I can't even fathom it, actually.
Does it bother you that your audience is predominantly male? Isn't that a bit divisive?
And
So you're saying
rely on.
women have some sort of duty to sort of help fix the crisis of masculinity.
So
you're
if you
saying
want
women want
domination,
to dominate, is that what you're saying?
No.
But what gives you the right to say that? I mean, maybe that's how women want their relationships, those women. I mean, you're making these vast generalizations.
I'm a clinical psychologist.
You're saying you've done your research and women are unhappy dominating men. You're saying
It's
there's a
bad.
crisis of masculinity? I mean, what do you do about it? But you're saying basically it doesn't matter if women aren't getting to the top. You're saying, well, that's just a fact of
No, I'm
life.
saying
Women
it
aren't
doesn't
necessarily
matter.
going to get to the top. You're saying
I'm
it's
saying
a fact
there are
of
multiple
life.
reasons for it.
I'm saying that 9% pay gap exists.
Yeah.
That's a gap between men and women. I'm not saying why it exists, but it exists. Now,
Yeah, but
if
you
you're
have
a
to say
woman,
why
that
it
seems
exists.
pretty unfair.
You have to say why it exists.
Again, a vast generalization. Some
It's
women
not
are
a
not more
generalization.
agreeable than
Yes,
men.
that's true, but that's right. And some women get paid more than men.
So you're saying that by and large, women are too agreeable to get the pay rises they deserve. But you're saying it's not because of gender, it's because women are too agreeable to ask for pay rises. And you're
These
saying
things
if
you
it's at the
can't- you
cost
can't-
of men, that's a problem. But why shouldn't women have the right to choose not to have children or the right to choose those demanding
they
careers?
do.
But you're saying that makes them unhappy.
Far as
You're
the
saying it
program.
makes them miserable. I think I take issue with the idea of the typical woman
Hmm?
because, you know, all women are different.
I mean, people are treated pretty fairly in Western culture already, but we can
But they're
improve
really
that.
not, though, are they? So you're saying women are just more sensible. They don't want... Right, so you're saying that anyone who believes in equality, whether you call them feminists, call them whatever you want to call them, should basically give up because it ain't going to happen. So you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine. But still women aren't going to make it. That's what you're really saying.
Because in
What do
Scandinavia...
you mean by that? Equality of outcome is undesirable. So, I mean, are we going back to the dark
That's because
ages
they're actually
here?
not listening. They're
I'm
just
listening very
projecting
carefully,
what
and
they
I'm
think.
hearing you basically saying women need to just accept they're never going to make it on equal terms, equal outcomes is how you defined it.
No, I
If
didn't
I
say
was
that.
a young
I said that
woman
equal...
watching that, I would go, well, I might as well just go and play with my Cindy dolls and give
didn't
up
say
trying
that.
at school because I'm not going to get the top job I want because
said
there's
that
someone sitting there saying it's not possible
I
and it's
said
not
that
desirable, it's
equal
going to make
outcomes
you
aren't
miserable.
desirable. That's what I said.
Fine, you're saying
No,
that's
no.
fine.
No, I really
The
think that's-
patriarchal
I
system
really
is
think
just
that's
fine.
silly. I do. I think that's silly.
Successful women, though,
Mhm.
basically have to wear the trousers, in your view. They have to sort of become men to succeed, is what you're saying. Is it not desirable to have some of those female traits you're talking about? I'd say that's a generalization, but you've used the words female traits. Is it not desirable to have some of them at the top of business? I mean, maybe there wouldn't have
They
been
don't predict
a
success,
banking...
and
So
so
you're
does
saying
high
that-
negative emotion.
You're saying that women aren't intelligent enough to run these top companies?
No.
You got in trouble for refusing to call trans men and women by their preferred personal pronouns. I
No,
want to
that's
ask-
not actually true.
You cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
So you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
Ha, gotcha.
you have got me. You have got me. I'm trying to work
about
that through in
time.
my head. Yeah, it took a while.
It did, yeah.
Took a while. A trans person in your class has come to your class and said they want to be called
That's never
she.
happened. And I would call them she.
You're saying someone who's trying to work out their gender identity, who may well have struggled with that, had quite a
No
tough
doubt
time
have
over the
struggled
years.
with it, yeah.
You're comparing them with, you know, Chairman Mao, who
No, just the
saw the
activists.
deaths of millions of people. Well,
Just the
even if the
activists.
activists, you know, they're trans people too. They have a right to say these things.
Yeah, but they don't have
Isn't
a
it
right to
grossly
speak for their whole
insensitive
community.
to compare them to Chairman Mao or, you know, Pinochet, Augusto Pinochet. I mean, you know, this is grossly insensitive. Isn't
No, I
it?
didn't compare them to Pinochets.
Under Mao, millions of people died. I
Right.
mean, there's no comparison between
That's-
Mao and a trans activist, is there?
Why not?
Because trans activists aren't killing millions of people?
The philosophy that's guiding their utterances is the same philosophy.
The consequences are...
Not yet.
You're saying that trans activists
No.
could lead to the deaths of millions of people? What
No,
they're
I'm
doing-
saying that the philosophy that drives their utterances is the same philosophy that already has driven us to the deaths of millions of people.
Okay, tell us how that philosophy is in any way comparable.
Sure, that's no problem. The first thing is that the philosophy presumes that group identity is paramount. That's the fundamental philosophy that drove the Soviet Union and Maoist China. And it's the fundamental philosophy of the left-wing activists. It's identity politics. It doesn't matter who you are as an individual. It matters who you are in terms of your group identity.
You're just saying these things, though, to provoke, aren't you? I mean, you are a provocateur.
I never said
You're like
anything.
the alt-right that you hate to be compared to.
Everyone I hate is a literal Nazi, literal Nazi, literal Nazi.
Aren't you just whipping people up into a state of anger? And
Not at all.
So you're saying, like the lobsters, we're hardwired as men and women to do certain things, to sort of run along tram lines, and there's nothing we can do about it. Let me just get this straight. You're saying that we should organize our societies along the lines of the lobsters.
No, I'm not saying that.
We're talking about whether you can force someone to refer to you or refrain from referring to you in different ways. I guess one issue that I'm having difficulty with is what a pronoun is. I think we'd all acknowledge that you have a right to force people to refer to you in certain ways. If a professor had a class and they had a student who insisted on calling them a girl when they were male, or calling them queer or something, or I can think of way worse words, they would say, well, that's not a pronoun, that's a derogatory label that's just meant to degrade me. But if, who's to say what is a pronoun? And I'm not sure that it necessarily would change if 95 or 97 friends all insisted on sort of degrading or, using that pejorative label to the person. And I think that people who are transgendered or whatever do experience, when people use the wrong gender labels to them, they've experienced real prejudice. They experience it as kind of oppressive in that way. So I don't know if identity is a subject or an object, but I do know that we place important demands on one another. I don't know about nature, but I know that fundamentally, like, our society is going to work better if we respect each other, and I think history bears that out. That self-respect and allowing people's self-identification to play a role in that public aspect. We do already have limits on how people can refer to each other, and they're informed by how people want themselves to be referred to.
Okay, well, that's a lot of questions. So, and that's, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck about that. It's just, I'm going to have to sort that out for a minute. Well, the first thing I would say is, pronouns, and I'm not a linguist, so I'm not going to be able to whip this off the top of my head, although I do know that there is a psychologist named James Pennebaker who's written a whole book on pronouns, which you might be interested in referring to, and pronouns turn out to be extraordinarily important as signifiers, but they're also part of what's called a closed linguistic category, and they don't change. And so that's something that's useful to know. But you also bring up the distinction, or the lack of distinction, or made a lack of distinction between adjectives and pronouns. And that's pretty interesting, because there's no real reason why, if you can't insist upon which pronoun I use to address you, you can't also insist on which adjective I use to address you. And there's a lot more adjectives. And so that's, because I don't see, like, if you can choose your damn pronoun, why can't you choose your adjective? I mean, adjectives are, the words you listed as pejorative were actually not pronouns, they were adjectives. And so you can object to them. And there's no shortage of times when you use a pejorative adjective to describe someone, especially if you believe that they've misbehaved. It's like, if the person can insist upon their pronoun, why can't they insist upon their adjective? And that's another part of this problem with this multiplicative complexity that it isn't addressed properly within the law. With regards to respect, you said, well, human civilization progresses a lot better if we respect one another, and I actually don't believe that at all. I believe that human civilization progresses and maintains itself when we respect people who've earned respect. You don't just respect everybody randomly. Well, what the hell use is respect if you just respect people randomly? It's like inflating the currency, It's like the Simpsons episode where, Bart gets a trophy because it's every child gets a trophy day. All you do is inflate the currency. Respect is actually limited to that category of people who have earned respect in some manner. So whatever you're talking about with regards to, say, common decency between people, it's not respect. And the definitions actually matter. They matter a lot. And so I hear the respect argument all the time, but you also can't force me to respect you. You might be able to force me to act like I respect you, but you can't force me to respect you. It's just not possible. You could break me, I suppose, and then perhaps I would do it, although I can't see exactly how precisely. But
So there's a number of, I mean, I get your point, and I'm not trying to denigrate it in any sense. There's a complex issue here, which is to what degree do you allow individuals to govern the conversation that's had about them in their presence or otherwise. But I would just revert back to my original argument, which is that's a negotiation. It's either a negotiation. You got 3 states to negotiate with someone. You can be their slave, or you can be their tyrant. And I would pick negotiation, but as far as I'm concerned, the law right now, as it's currently instantiated, is a tyrant, and it makes people into its slave. And